Hi, everyone. We'll give it a few more minutes while people are joining. We'll give it just a couple more minutes because there's still a lot of people joining us. Okay, let's go ahead and get started. I think the people joining has slowed down. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today. I'm Lisa Deshay, and as you all know, Helen sadly has moved on to other pastures. I won't say they're greener, but they might be in North Carolina. She has been joining some of the prep calls this month to help the transition. I will be stepping in temporarily to help with facilitating some of these meetings and whatever else Dr. Bard wants me to do. I am a senior research biostatistician for assigned to this project, among others, and I've been analyzing the data for the C1 programs this cycle. Let me just share our agenda briefly. Can you see my screen? What screen do you see?
You see it.
We can see it. We can see the agenda.
Okay. Okay. Usually there's like an outline and that shows you which screen it's going to show, and it didn't do that this time. I'm just going to review briefly the template, since everyone will be having a presentation next month at the end of July. And then Dr. Bard will be giving us an update on the innovation project and the positive parenting app. And then we'll have some breakout rooms with a couple of questions, and then we'll come back and everybody will share one or two ideas that they came up with, and then we'll go on from there. So does anybody have any questions before I go over the template, which I'm sure y'all very familiar with by now? Okay. And you can have any background you want. You've seen this before. You'll just give a little bit of background on your program, and you don't have to fill in all of these counts and stuff if you don't want to. And then tell us about your PDSA project and why you chose this, what was going on that made you want to do this project, and what your SMART aim was. And then you'll talk about your measures, your main outcome measure. You may have only one. Some programs kept it simple and just had one outcome measure, which is fine. And everybody will have at least one process measure and one disruptor measure. And then you'll show us your change theory diagram. And as you know, this may have just the change idea, one process measure, one disruptor measure, and one final outcome, the primary driver. You may have multiple disruptor and multiple process measures. And if you have any trouble with this, your analyst can help you put together that diagram. I think you should have it already based on our work earlier this year. And then tell us about your plan and what you did, your outcome measures, your process measure, your disruptor measure. And if you need your analyst to give you screenshots or pop that in for you, just please ask. I'm sure they'll be happy to help. I know I will for the C1 programs. And then tell us what happened. What do these measures mean? What do they tell you about your PDSA project? And what did you learn? And are there any changes you're going to make going forward? And if you need this template, you can just ask Lisa, and she'll be the other Lisa Tunley, and she'll be happy to send it to you. Do you have any questions about that? Okay, Dr. Bard, if you would like to take it away and talk to us about the MIECHV innovation update.
I can do that. Thank you, Lisa. Get my screen oriented here. Okay, let me know how I did. Can you see the
Yes.
presentation?
Yes.
All right, I wanted to provide an update today on the Innovation Award. We talked about this a few months ago. This is the award that will allow your agencies to make referrals through a new web portal hosted by a company called Unite Us. Unite Us is already in Oklahoma, as we talked about. There is a Unite Oklahoma group of provider agencies, some of whom are actually on this call and already participating, who utilize this currently. And the hope is, as you'll see in just a moment, that we can improve some of the efficiencies of incoming and outgoing referrals. I would say for home visiting and for this grant, our focus is a little bit lopsided. We're going to focus more on the outgoing referrals, but Incoming referrals are still a piece of it. And we do hope that particularly through some identified partner referral agencies, we will increase the number of families being referred to your programs. This is just a general overview of the project goals. You see the highlighted sections here that the core innovation component is this Unite Us social care application. This is part of ARPA funding in a roundabout way. And so narrowing inequity gaps in client access to care and supports is really at the heart of what we're attempting to do. But, along the way, we're trying to solve this age-old problem of bidirectional referrals and closing the loop, as they say, on referrals that you make and referrals that come to you, so that both sides of that referral are able to more easily communicate with one another about what's happening with the family. I don't probably have to convince this crowd preaching to the choir here about the benefits of an electronic care coordination system that allows you to close the loop, but just know that this is a burgeoning area of research that's been going fast and furious now for about 15 years. And in the early stages, it was pretty rudimentary, and now we've got these very fancy and point-of-click, real-time exchanges of data that's happening, and it is exploding nationally for a variety of programs. And Unite Us is really at the forefront of this work, so we're excited about partnering with them. These are my assumptions, our assumptions, when we put this project together. I hope you agree with most of them, but definitely try to poke holes in if you can. And we want to make this as solid a foundation as possible as we develop this new system. Well-designed supported care coordination technology can transform the connectedness of community-based organizations. We really feel like this is the pathway of the future, whether we have the innovation award or not, that this type of technology is coming our way sooner rather than later. This close the loop feature has been a headache for so many in the social care service industry, and that's really where these web portal referral exchange systems are making a name for themselves and really overcoming this particular obstacle. We do think that by closing that loop, we're going to improve trust with our care coordination processes and increase the frequency of the referral exchanges between the organizations. So often we've heard anecdotally that, well, I made this referral to so-and-so and nothing really happened, or I had no idea what happened with it, and therefore I gave up on it and I'm not making referrals to that agency anymore. So that's one of the headaches and one of the problems that we're attempting to solve here with this new application. Enhanced speed and ease. We do hope that this leads to greater rates of service utilization. So we know timing here matters a lot. This has been studied for decades, and that the speed at which a referral is received, acknowledged, and then responded to greatly increases the chances, the faster that is, it greatly increases the chances that the family will engage in those services. So we do think that this electronic exchange of care coordination will enhance speed and thereby enhance utilization. So that's the foundation where we're starting. And again, we've opted to go with the Unite Us application for this. I ran through this in more detail on our call the last time. You're going to see this again and again, forgive the redundancy here. But just a quick reminder of the steps that are involved. Step one, no surprise. You have a client who shows up at your program and there's a need. You screen for that need, you assess it, you make a referral. That referral is received, and then really the key to all of this and the true innovation here is step 5, this feedback loop that's created between you and the referral agency, or perhaps between an agency referring to you and you are now the referral agency. Again, the focus will be a little lopsided on the outgoing, but incoming referrals is also a part of this new project. Project goals, we ran through these 2 months ago as well. And I will tell you that the numbers you see on this slide are brand new to you all. This is what we proposed in the application. It's not set in stone. And so we will, in the months ahead, be talking very closely with you about how accurate or how realistic, I should say, these numbers are. So the same principles apply to these goals as do the SMART aims that you're developing for your PDSAs. We want them to be realistic. We want them to be achievable. And they may not be. We took a stab in the dark at a figure here for each one as mandated by our sponsors. We had to have numbers go with us. So for the moment, we're saying that our goal on number one here is to increase number of referrals for home visiting services by 25% annually from our pilot referral network. And that's important here. So we're not saying that you're going to boost your referral rate on the whole 25%, but from these 3 agencies that we've selected as pilot referral network partners, Sooner Start, Lasso, and PCAP, that's where we're looking to see the biggest increase or bump in referrals. The second goal here is to increase the number of outgoing referrals by 30% annually to community agencies addressing social determinants of health. All 3 of our pilot referral network agencies are addressing social determinants of health. And there may be, we know there are others. So we plan to lump those together, categorize them, quantify them. And our goal here is to see a 30% increase in the number of outgoing referrals annually. Again, up for discussion, up for revision. That's where we started. The third goal is to close that referral loop for outgoing referrals. And we're going to be able to document this now via the Unitas app. And so we have a rudimentary way of documenting that in your old systems, primarily now, of course, in the ETO system and the referral tracking area. We will be doing some before and after comparisons of the number of those loops that get closed with and without the Unitas app, or before and after the Unitas app, but also the quality or the reliability of the information in that closed loop referral. Goal 4, increase retention of clients, particularly among groups facing care inequity. Here we're looking for an increase of 5%. Goal 5 is to train all of our local implementing agencies, of which you are all an example of, home visiting supervisors, on the assessment of need and care coordination with Lasso, Sooner Start, and PCAP by the end of the first year, and then train at least 75% of our providers by the end of the grant period. I think we're setting the bar pretty low here, and I have a feeling we're going to be able to saturate all of the providers and supervisors in the LIAs within our catchment here, which are any MIECHV funded agencies. So those participating in the Learning Collaborative, that's our target audience. And by training, really what we want, really what we mean here is having a good understanding of the services that are offered by these pilot referral network agencies, and understanding very well what the eligibility criteria are for each one of those programs. So we have started this process already with the presentation on our last monthly call by our colleagues at PCAP. And we will continue to have forums like that, particularly through our monthly calls, where you're introduced to individuals from each of these programs, and we talk through these particular issues. There'll also be discussions and educational opportunities, if you will, in between our monthly calls, directly with my staff and directly with liaisons from each of these agencies on these topics. Finally, the sixth goal here is really a charge for our team at the university to disseminate any lessons learned and implementation successes to the national HV community. So others are looking at us very closely and looking at the use of this particular app, anxious to adopt it themselves and learn from the lessons that you all provide. So it's our job, I think, to be the mouthpiece for you all, and we'll be leaning heavily on your PDSA documentation and the stories that you tell us in the monthly calls and in our rounding sessions, so that we can pass it along to the broader community.
Dr. Bard?
Yes.
Can I ask a question? This is Kathy Sullivan.
Yeah.
I have a question on your first goal there, and I apologize
Yes.
up front if you've said this, but I just want to clarify that would be referrals that this group would receive, meaning these agencies involved in this project would receive from Lasso, Sooner Start, and PCAP. Is that correct?
That is correct.
So, and just again, you know this, but so Children First, for instance, would never receive a referral for a new client anyway from Sooner Start because they've already delivered.
Yes.
Okay.
Great point. And we're not looking at any particular agency by themselves. We're looking in the aggregate.
Okay.
But again, it's a good point, Kathy, and something we ought to consider before we do settle on an actual figure here.
Okay, thanks.
Any other questions about the project goals? And I'm hiding the lead here a little bit. Our timeline has been revised, so I probably should have told you that before I threw these numbers at you, and you panic and think, well, we've got to settle on this within a month. We are delaying the start of the PDSAs around this referral network, this new revised referral network, until January of 2023. So we have essentially 6 months to settle on some figures here that we want to run with for these before and after comparisons.
David, this is Yolanda.
Yeah.
So if we have been delayed the starting of this new project, are we going to be working in the next 6 months still with the child development, right?
Correct.
Okay.
And that was always the plan. And so in some ways, this delay is a bit of a blessing. There was going to be some overlap in when we started the innovation PDSAs and your work on this final parenting promotion and developmental monitoring PDSA. This way, the delay allows us to eliminate overlap. And so we'll finish out your next PDSA on developmental monitoring and promotion, and then we'll start one focused on the innovation referral network. Okay, now your last chance to ask questions real quickly. I'm going to skim through this. We'll give you these slides. And again, we talked about this a little bit last time. Here's an updated version of the org chart from at the leadership level of the project. And just to give you a flavor of everyone who's involved. Obviously, we've got the referral network folks listed over here for Sooner Start, LASSO, and PCAP. On the Sooner Start side, we're still trying to figure this out, but OSDE, certainly sanctioned this project, and we're trying to coordinate an individual meeting to see how we want to lead that effort, if we want to keep it on the OSDE side, or if we want to run it on the OSDH side, especially given the fact that on the OSDH side, they're working with Oklahoma and Tulsa County, two of the prime target areas for this particular work. So up in the air, and at some point, you're going to meet one or more individuals on both sides of that aisle as we talk through the referral process for Sooner Start. OSDH, right in the center of everything, of course. Unite Us is the company that we have selected. Ed Long from, one of the reasons, and I mentioned this 2 months ago, one of the reasons we selected Unite Us is, we felt they very smartly embedded themselves within our community and really went above and beyond in that regard by consulting with local experts, including Ed Long. And these are now the ambassadors for the system here in Oklahoma. And Ed has made a lot of progress here with a lot of these other existing Unite Us Oklahoma agencies currently using the app. He has agreed to come on board, be part of our steering committee, and help us lead this effort now, connecting your agencies to the pilot referral network. OPSR is on here and a huge advocate as well of using this app, and of course doing whatever they can to facilitate efficiencies for your operations. And then you've got my team here on the left. Formal introduction still pending. I don't think she's on today, is she, Lisa? She just asked Tabitha. Tabitha, are you on today? I don't believe so, but Tabitha Fleming is a new faculty member who's been a postdoc with us for a little over a year. Years ago, used to be a research assistant with us, came back about a year and a half ago, will be joining the faculty officially next month, and will be helping lead the Learning Collaborative work for the innovation project. So we will make a formal introduction of Dr. Fleming at next month's learning session. She will be in attendance for both our Oklahoma County and our Tulsa County learning session. Okay, the revised timeline. Here's your lead. We had to adjust it a bit, as I said before, in part because the contracting is a bit complex and we're working on getting all those ducks in a row now. I'll just call out where these things currently stand. So this is the current existing plan. I think we have a good shot at staying on target here with this revised timeline. Everywhere that you see app IMP, That's for the application implementation process. And that is where we're doing some discovery of what do the eligibility criteria actually look like? How do we translate that across these different programs? So that will be happening, you see here, and these are federal fiscal years. So the federal fiscal year starts in October and ends in September. So by Q4 here, what we really mean is that this work is going to begin in August, late August and September. Very likely that your supervisors will receive some phone calls from folks at Unite Us and from our team here asking these discovery questions about enrollment and eligibility. All of that is then going to be programmed into the Unite Us application. And we will be sorting out with your assistance how best to interface with this new tool, this new referral feature. I have to say up front, because I know you're thinking it, boy, this seems awfully redundant with what we're doing in ETO, and it is, sadly. For the moment, that's unavoidable. Long term, there's still in the works, I don't think it's finalized yet, a partnership between ETO, or Social Solutions, the company that owns ETO, and Unite Us. And we're very hopeful, and it sounds promising, that these two are actually melded together so that information will not have to be repeated, will not have to be duplicated in both of those systems. At present day, as I'm speaking right now, they have to be duplicated, and we're trying to figure out ways, and we'll need your assistance to limit the amount of burden we put on your staff, on your providers, so that this does get exchanged. And it could end up meaning that other individuals, including folks at our shop, help enter information in one of those systems. Okay, so that's your implementation phase, where we find out all of the information we need to put inside the app, how we want to interface with the app, how it will replace or complement at least the existing ETO referral system. Then you'll notice that we've got counties listed here: Oklahoma, Comanche, Tulsa, Muskogee. RO is for rollout. So this is where we're going to roll out for a particular program the referral processes. So Sooner Start, you'll notice, is going to be rolled out in Oklahoma County and in Comanche County in the second quarter of that second fiscal year. So this would be January. Am I doing that right? Yeah, January of 23 is our target date. For Tulsa and Muskogee counties, we're aiming for the fourth quarter of that second year. So this would be July, August, September of 2023. This gets reversed essentially as we talk about LASSO. Notice that LASSO referrals, that functionality will be available to Tulsa and Muskogee January of 23. It won't be available for Oklahoma or Comanche until July of 23. PCAP is essentially on the same pattern here as Sooner Start. And so Oklahoma County, you'll have access in January. Tulsa, you'll have access in July. Comanche, Muskogee, you'll notice the names are not listed here. That's because PCAP for the moment is not available in those counties. Questions on this portion of the timeline before I move on? Okay, and I guess I sort of implied it earlier, but let me be more explicit. This January date, the start date, we will be starting up a new learning collaborative solely focused on this innovation project and referrals within the Unite Us application. And so we will have a session scheduled mid to late January where we get together, develop a PDSA, create some processes whereby you will monitor activity in Unite Us for referrals to these partner referral network agencies. A lot more on that coming in the near future. As I said before, we'll be gathering a lot of information from you in the implementation phase, not only about how the application works, but also how we foresee this learning collaborative operate come January of 2023. I don't think I showed this last time, and I may have just mentioned it in passing, but I thought it was worth showing you explicitly that we are actually hiring staff, or at least portions of staff, from each of these referral partnering agencies to work on this project, to troubleshoot and to respond to any requests or difficulties that you have engaging with these agencies. Now at LASSO, it was a heavier lift, because what we're hoping for is, what we're shooting for here are individuals to work on legal issues of your clients and be dedicated solely to home visiting clients. So that's true in Oklahoma and Tulsa County, and then you'll notice we have a part-timer in Comanche and Muskogee. In addition to those 4 individuals, we are also hiring a part-time liaison from the agency who will be your one-stop shop for any questions or problems that you encounter. You'll notice that liaison is also going to be hired for Sooner Start and for PCAP. You'll get a chance to meet these folks soon, and we're likely to introduce them to you in a future monthly call, in a session just like the one we're on right now. Care coordination liaisons, this is their responsibility, assist with Unitas development. So they'll be involved in that app implementation phase we talked about. They'll also be the site specific expert on any referral questions that you might have, and then any troubleshooting for unclosed, if you will, these referral loops. So they'll be hunting for those unclosed referral loops themselves, but then also relying on you to tell them when things aren't working the way you had hoped. You're going to hear a lot more about this when we get to September, and this implementation rollout begins to happen, or this implementation phase begins to happen. Unitas will be guiding this, and this is their typical development timeline. It usually takes 4 to 6 months. We're told that in this instance, it'll be a lot closer to 4 months, because we're fairly concentrated here on these 4 programs, home visiting agencies, and also our 3 referral partner network agencies. The last half of the timeline involves our learning collaborative and involves the evaluation work. So maybe I wasn't ahead of my, or I wasn't falling behind there. This is when I was going to tell you that we'll have a learning session in January of 2023 and be developing some PDSAs around the referral network at that time. We'll monitor activity, as we always do in the learning collaborative and these action phases. And you'll notice there are 3 of these set up, just as we've done for family engagement, father engagement, and now developmental monitoring and promotion. We'll be doing the same thing. They'll be roughly 6 months apart. You'll have an action phase of roughly 5 months where we're monitoring activity and identifying any problems and documenting any lessons learned. From an evaluation perspective, if you think back to goal 6, disseminate this information, we're planning to do a sort of a before and after picture, landscape picture of referrals happening among our home visiting agencies, at least those participating in the learning collaborative. So here in that second fiscal year, my team will be working on putting together a synopsis of what the referral processes currently look like. And we'll be relying on some of your work right now that's happening. So I sat in on a call with LCDA yesterday. As you may recall, they're looking at this referral issue for their early intervention services or developmental services. And they've already identified some issues that we know we've got to resolve before we get to this innovation project. So that'll be part of our before Unitas synopsis for sure. And there'll be plenty of other data that we want to present here. All of it sort of being the backdrop, if you will, for what we achieve during the innovation grant period and the 3 action phases of our upcoming learning collaborative. That'll all be summarized and submitted, we think, by the first quarter of fiscal year 4. So this is taxing my brain here a little bit. Let's see. That would be December. It'll be due probably December of 2024. I think I got that right.
I think it's 25, isn't it? Because we're in fiscal year 1 now, 22, 23, 24, 25. Because it'd be in
Right.
24, but it'd be fiscal year
calendar
25.
year.
Yeah, calendar year 24.
Sorry, more redundancy here. I think I've said this already, but the care coordinators and our Unite Us reps will be presenting in future calls. Again, you got a preview of that last month with our PCAP folks. The Partner Referral Network, there it is, June. That was our PCAP. Actually, that should say May. They did our May monthly call. Sooner start, we're targeting tentatively for an August monthly call, LASSO for September. And this is the type of content that we've asked them to review with you all. Program overview, including the need for their program, training on the social determinants of health and how they relate to their programs, program eligibility, and referral processes. I alluded to it earlier with the involvement of OPSR, the Oklahoma Partnership for School Readiness, previously the Smart Start Oklahoma group. We have a steering committee. Director from OPSR is on that, as are leaders from all of the org chart entities that you saw previously. These folks we're planning to have gathered together quarterly and do some progress updates and some planning and troubleshooting. I thought it'd be helpful for you to know that that's happening. This is a ongoing question for you, especially in the next 6 months as we start to lay the foundation for the learning collaborative that's ahead that will begin in January. But please be thinking of what else we might be, we should be paying attention to. And I said just a moment ago, I had a fantastic call with LCDA yesterday as we were prepping their final presentation for the current PDSA. And they're looking very closely at their own internal processes for developmental referrals and identifying a number of issues in terms of how it's tracked in our current systems, how user-friendly the current system is, and relaying information back to a provider for the history of a referral episode. That was very informative, and that's the type of information I definitely will be leaning heavily on you all to highlight, to shine a spotlight on, so that we can make sure that it's part of our innovation work and we do the best we can to try to overcome some of those barriers. Okay, so that ends this portion of today's monthly call, but again, you're going to have many opportunities to ask questions and provide input, but any reflections and reactions based on this brief update? Okay, well, to be continued. I'm going to pause share just for a moment and I'm going to swap out slides because I think I'm next too, right, Lisa?
Yes, you were going to talk about the mHealth Positive Parenting app. Instead of web portal, we're distinguishing Unite Us is a web portal versus an app.
Yes, I know it gets confusing, all these fancy technical innovations here. In my mind, at least, or in my vernacular, at least, this is how I'm trying to keep track of these two overlapping projects. We are right in the middle of this, the mHealth application study. M for mobile, as you probably know. App here now, I'm using the abbreviation because this is a mobile application that can be and is intended to be installed on a mobile phone. We've introduced this idea, Helen and I have a couple of times in past monthly calls. I wanted to give you an update on where we are in the development process. And in fact, I'm actually excited to share with this group that it is ready to be demoed, that we're ready for what we're calling beta testing of the Positive Parenting Practices app, phone app again. Helen deserves a ton of credit for all of the work that's happened to date and also helping us get some external funding for this. It's actually intramural funding, but it's by way of NIH. And it's a pilot grant. So we're looking for, our main target here is feasibility of this particular system. And just to give you a little bit of history, it's an idea we've had floating around in our minds for forever. It sort of took on new life around the time that this very simple positive parenting practices handout became such a popular ask from a lot of our early childhood professional agencies. And we got to wondering, boy, wouldn't it be great if we had a system that could provide information like this directly to clients or parents in this case, who most need this information and may not have to, rely necessarily on when they interact with a professional at a home visit or at a doctor's visit or at an early childhood care center. And we thought, well, especially given our work with home visiting, it would be great if somebody could design an app like this that would complement the parenting modules that are already being instituted and embedded within the curricula that exists. Safe Care was the one we opted to go with initially, in part because they didn't have anything quite like this just yet. And whereas C1 and NFP have been using an app, maybe not necessarily for the parenting side of it, for the parent-child interaction, but definitely for the goal setting side with their, you may have to help me, C1 folks, it's the Mama something app.
No, we're not using that anymore, Dr. Bard. They discontinued that.
Did they? Okay.
Yeah, it was Goal Mama, Dr. Bard.
Yeah.
Goal Mama, thank you. So C1 had been around this before, at least NFP had been around that block once before. PAT has been tinkering with a few apps as well, similar spirit here. So anyway, Safe Care was kind of a natural choice for us, especially given our close ties to the National Training Center. And they were all on board and supportive of this work. In fact, wrote a letter of support for us as we got this started. Because Safe Care was the initial target, we opted to build the content around Safe Care's planned activities training materials. You see the introduction to that particular manual here in front of you. It helped that Kathy Bigelow and I know each other, and it was an easy phone call to make to ask her to be a part of this work. She had been doing something very similar, and she's been doing this for almost 10 years now. It involved phones, but it wasn't an app. She was doing it via text messaging and having some moderate success. So we thought, well, let's build on that, see if we can get Kathy on the team. And she very eagerly joined. And we've been busy for the last 4 months or so building content within an app that hit a lot of the same targets as the PAT materials. I have to tell you, though, up front, that the vision here is much broader than Safe Care. And so this was sort of a choice of, where we get started and maybe even somewhat an arbitrary choice. But we would like this app eventually to be useful. Well, I say eventually, I think immediately even be useful to all home visiting programs and all early childhood programs that are already emphasizing some aspect of quality parent-child interaction. As designed now, the main intervention, if you will, within the app is or are these parenting prompts. And so twice daily for this particular app, a parent will receive some guidance that in this case is reinforcing content they would have been exposed to through the Safe Care parenting module. We elected to highlight routines for the parenting guidance. And so we are giving parents a choice between morning routines and evening routines. And they choose one of each. And then twice daily, they get a prompt about their morning routine. And then in the evening, they get a prompt about their evening routine. The prompt content, on demand, they always have available to them some general tips that are emphasized by a lot of programs, but we took a lot of the language from the PAT, we adapted it a little bit. So for example, some general tips here on positive parenting practices: keep your rules simple, clear, and easy to follow. And so they kind of have that existing in the background at all times. Then they get their prompt. And here are examples of prompts for one of our morning routines, the getting your child up early in the morning. So the prompt could be about preparing in advance. So getting up in the morning is impacted by how well the night of sleep was. So try to have your child go to bed at the same time each night. That's your morning prompt. It could be about giving choices here now in the middle of this list. So give your child a choice on how they want to wake up each morning. For example, set an alarm by you using a soft voice or with some music or with a gentle hug. So we have targeted at least 7 tips. I think you see 7 here for this getting your child up in the morning for all of the routines that I showed you on the previous slide. Study design. What we're hoping is that we can accomplish some beta testing starting in August. We're not hoping for a large sample for this. In fact, we're setting a very reasonable figure of just 10 clients. So starting around August 15th and ending around September the 23rd, we're hoping to convince 10 clients to engage in this adventure with us with this new parenting app. Those who agree to do this will be consented into a study. It's essentially a discovery session. And we're asking them to use the app for 2 weeks. During those 2 weeks, they'll be only providing information about their parenting interactions, their child's behavior, and then a very small list of some challenges or stressors that they encounter as a parent. And this is an element that lives in the background of the app at all times, as you'll see in a moment. We're asking them to do that for the first 2 weeks. And then for the last 2 weeks, we're asking them to continue providing that information to us, but to also then participate in the positive parenting prompts, the PPP designated here. Provider contacts. We would like providers of programs who opt to build a PDSA around the app to gather some information from these 10 clients twice a week. And that could just be by an email message or a text message. Really, we're looking here for problems with the system. This is the feasibility beta testing stage. So we're not heavily focused on, is this having an impact on parenting behavior beyond the parents' engagement with the app? That's the behavior we're interested in. And if we find out in the first week that, well, they've given up on this thing because it's too hard to get their responses into the EMA or survey, or it's too difficult to open, or it takes too long for the app to open, or it's too annoying to get these prompts. That's the type of information we're hoping to get in that 1 month beta testing period, roughly 1 month beta testing period. All of that information, there's going to be a rapid turnaround of trying to make improvements to the system on the fly. And the app will update, and the parents, the next day will wake up to, we hope, a new experience, a more pleasant experience, and we'll continue to gather this feedback from these 10 beta clients for that 1 month. At the end of it, we will transition to our study design, our main study design, which is a crossover trial. This will begin on October the 3rd. It'll continue through the end of December, essentially before the holidays. Our target sample size for that phase is 50 clients. App usage is the same. So 2 weeks of EMA only, and then 2 weeks of the EMA and the PPP. By the way, EMA is one of those fancy acronyms. So it's ecological momentary assessment. It's a terminology that's been used for collecting data frequently like this, where you get it every day. So EMA for short. This is a crossover trial. So what's different about this phase relative to the beta testing is that Some individuals will start with the EMA for the first 2 weeks and then do EMA and get their parenting prompts for the last 2 weeks. Others, it'll be reversed, and they'll start by gathering EMA and also getting their parenting prompts for 2 weeks. And then the last 2 weeks will be EMA only. And so that's the crossover, if you will. Half of the sample, 25 of these clients, will see it in one sequence, and the other half will see it in the opposite sequence. The sequence they get will be randomized. Provider contacts. Here we're really just looking for, during visits or at whatever frequency you think would be helpful, providing some encouragement to the parent to keep them engaged with the app. And this is really where we want the PDSA that's developed to contribute to the project. And encouragement ideas here, we're a blank slate. We're open to you, the experts, on what you think would help engage your clients in this particular app. Recruitment. For programs that are working with us starting in August, what we're looking for is just a short, steady pitch that we will help write out for you. Right now, it would say something to the effect of, the University of Oklahoma is working with our program to design a new parenting app that can be used to supplement our in-person parenting modules. If you're interested in participating, I will notify a research assistant from OU to contact you with more information. Short and sweet. There'll probably be 1 or 2 other sentences in between here to describe the burden on the participant, which is really providing this information daily, reading or acknowledging the prompts that you receive, and that's it. And we could definitely use your input on how we word that particular statement. Steps to enrollment. The RA needs to be notified, and right now this too needs some input. We had originally thought about using our REDCap system, which we know is secure, it's HIPAA secure, and they can provide, or you can provide information to us so that it's fully protected. We could potentially do this through ETL though, in the same form and fashion that you're uploading information about your existing PDSAs, right? We could have a new touch point. In this instance, it's the Parenting Pro app touch point, and you can tell us whether or not this is a client who wants to be a part of the beta testing, or when the time comes, be a part of the crossover trial. And we could gather that nightly, send it to our research assistant, and make a phone call to the client that very next day. When the RA calls, they'll schedule an enrollment appointment. At that appointment, they're given all the nitty-gritty details about participation, and they have to fill out a research consent form that has been approved by the IRB. They also will be gathering some baseline data, more on that in a minute. And we will provide a phone if needed and or desired. The research assistant will help install the app. They'll also demo the app for the parent, show them how to engage in it or interact with it over the period of the next month. We are considering alternatives to this, and here again, we could use some input. So we want this to run as efficiently as possible. We know, based on past experience, it's tough to schedule these in-person data collection and consenting appointments. It can be done, and we've been very successful at it over the years. But in part, thanks to a pandemic, we have learned that it tends to work even better if we do all of this virtually. The one thing we can't do virtually is hand them a phone if they need it. And so this is where we're considering alternatives. We'll be eliciting your feedback. If you're capable of handing out phones for us, that might be a better option and a better way to convince clients to participate. And we can retrieve the phone. We could also potentially mail the phone if we think that would work better. But anyway, we're an open book on that, and we have about a month and a half to make a final decision. A little less than a month and a half to make a final decision. Phones, real important here. So the app that we're using can only work at present on an Android phone. So when it says if needed or desired, if they do not have an Android mobile phone, they're not going to be able to install the app on their own, on their existing phone, and we would have to provide them a phone. So we have study funding to provide those phones. And we're happy to provide it if they don't want to install the app on their personal phone. We understand and want to respect that particular decision. And so that's the desired part of this as well. So the phones are available. They can be used. They're in their possession for roughly a month, and then we'll collect it at the same time that we do a follow-up assessment. More on that in just a second. Okay, participation details. Baseline assessment, you heard about that before. There'll be a mirror image of that on the tail end of their participation. It'll be the follow-up assessment. Each of these we think will take about 45 to 60 minutes. We're gathering demographic information, some adversity exposure information. Obviously, we're interested in their positive parenting practices and their child's development and a few other things, but it's fairly short relative to many of the other assessments we've provided historically. The follow-up will occur roughly a month after enrollment. It doesn't have to be the very last day that they get a prompt, but we'll try to schedule it as soon after that as we can. And they're compensated for each of these 2 assessments. So they're a little bit lengthier than that EMA. So each one of those is a $50 compensation. The EMA component, these are these brief surveys that they get once a day. They get to choose the timing of it, by the way. We went back and forth on that, decided let's leave it up to the parent to decide what time of day is best to participate in this roughly 5-minute survey that asks about parent-child interactions over the day, over the last 24 hours, stressors and challenges, and some child emotion and behavior. They also get compensated for these. Again, it's happening every single day. So, $50 we couldn't afford, but $2 is what we're offering. So $2 for those 5-minute surveys. If they complete it, they get the $2. If they miss a day, that's fine. We ask that they reconsider on the following day when they're going to get notified again to provide similar information. If they complete it on that next day, they get $2 for that one. The one they skipped, they would not receive compensation for. Parenting prompts. As I said, this will happen twice a day, one in the morning and one in the evening. We also are planning to have this customizable. And so the parent can decide, what time of day do I want this reminder to show up? And what time of night do I want this to show up? In addition to the prompts, there are other things embedded in the app. So we are including some Parent Pro web content, for example. We have the activities page from the Parent Pro website. The resource links are in there from the Parent Pro website, and the parenting toolkit is also embedded within the app now. We also have a link to, I think it's just a link, but it might be the actual content now, from the Learn the Signs Act Early page of the CDC. We were very selective there based on some of the lessons you all learned in your previous PDSAs. And so we're focusing most of that on this educational informative content about development from birth to age 5. This one we're still an open book on, and we'd like to include more content, on-demand content, if you will, and we're open to any ideas that you all may have. Okay, I think that's the end of this particular segment, and I'm happy to entertain any questions that you have. I also wanted to make a plug. So we have previously engaged with our Safe Care programs on the Learning Collaborative here and talked about using the Positive Parenting app. So more details coming, Safe Care folks, about how you can build your PDSA next month to incorporate the app. And I will say up front that if you want to participate in this at PDSA and also do your own PDSA on something else, maybe a continuation of what you've been working on for this current action phase, we are completely fine with that. And we are sort of at your discretion. You let us know where your interest and your capacity lies. I can't make any guarantees on this, but I am soliciting interest from the broader group. And if this is an app you want to experiment with in your next PDSA, please notify me. I do have some very limited funds available to supplement this work. And if we can increase our sample size, or if we feel we need another program to reach our targets that you saw before, we would love to include you in this project. If you're not involved in the project next phase, that of course is fine too. And we will be updating you on our progress. You'll be receiving a full rundown of our findings, and we hope to present that at the learning session scheduled for January, a preliminary version of that at least, based on the findings of clients who participate in the next action phase. A lot of people to thank for this study. We've got some intramural funding from our Oklahoma Shared Clinical and Translational Resources Center here on campus. Obviously, the Learning Collaborative is supported by HRSA, and you all in the health department for making this happen. So our partners at Georgia State University, which is where the National Safe Care Training Center resides, they're very much involved in providing input on the process and looking over the data once we have it and seeing what they might want to do long-term for their program. And then our colleague, Kathy Bigelow and her team at Juniper Gardens Children's Project, part of the University of Kansas.
David, I have a couple of questions.
Yes.
So with these with these families that we can ask if they want to participating, when you're talking about demographics, what do you need? For example, I have 5 families, they say they're okay. Do we need to collect all the demographic or anything, or just the name of the ETO number? How that's going to be for you to collect the information?
I will send you our eligibility criteria, which I'm sorry I did not include in this slide, but they do have to have a child of a certain age to participate. And I should know this, but I believe we settled on 6 months. They have to be older than 6 months. The prompts that we have built thus far really do not work well for early infants. And so I think they have to be 6 months is where we settled. I may have to revise that after this call, but I'll go look and then I will circulate by email those eligibility criteria. And in terms of the demographic information, we'll collect that in the assessments that I mentioned, the baseline and the follow-up assessments. And it's just a brief 1 or 2 form demographic survey that they complete.
Yeah, if you don't mind to send, that information in writing, just in case, to share with educators and see if we have anybody that can be eligible for this.
I will do that. Yes, absolutely. Thank you.
Dr. Barr, is this, the app is also in Spanish, or this will be only for English speakers?
Right now it's not in Spanish, but we would really love for it to be translated. So can I talk to you offline about that, Patty? We have some ideas about how we make that happen, but
okay.
I might have some specific questions for you.
Okay.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Bard. That sounds like we've got a lot of exciting things coming in the future, and I'll be really interested to see how everything rolls out and being able to analyze the results. Of course, as an analyst, that's the part that excites me. Just when everybody else's eyes start to glaze over, people like Andrew and Rachel and I start getting excited. But that's job security for us, and it's a relief for you that you don't have to do that. Now I'd like to go into some breakout rooms for 8 to 10 minutes, and we have 2 questions for you, and there's a backwards looking question and a forward looking question. The backward looking question is, what has your program learned about having a successful CQI project? Things to avoid or things to do? And the other question, the looking forward question, is because we will have these other PDSAs going on related to the app and the web portal and all, we want to get a head start in thinking about the ideas for your next CQI PDSA related to developmental monitoring and promotion. So start kicking around some ideas that you might have for your next project. And then we'll come back and we'll just go through what you identified as things you've learned from the past going forward that may inform your colleagues in the other programs. Okay, so Lisa, if you would put us in the breakout rooms.
Okay, so you can all just start choosing your rooms. I just opened them. If you need help, if you need me to put you in one, just let me know.
Okay, so if we scroll down on this window, we can find the programs that we want to join. Okay.
And just press join. Sometimes you have
Oklahoma,
to hover over.
Yeah.
Yeah.
yeah, Oklahoma C1 won't be here, so
Okay.
we won't need that one.
I don't know if I see where I can choose.
Yeah. I think that's always like that for you, Patty.
Yes,
You
it's
gotta get
always
a
like
new
that.
Zoom.
Maybe I need to do that.
I don't see it either.
If you
Let
can
me
just send
see.
me
Hold on.
whatever you
It's
want.
changing so much. Every time somebody goes into a room, my screen changes. So let me find you, Patty, and put you in your room. Oh, see, changed again. I have to do it faster. Okay. And then who else needed to be put in the room?
Kathy Sullivan.
Okay. And you're going to okay,
C1.
C1.
Mhm.
Okay.
No, Tulsa C1. Sorry.
Or don't accept it. I'll put you.
Oh, okay.
I'll put it. See, I'm sorry, it changes every time.
So I have a question. So are we supposed to join our agency or find
Yeah.
another, your agency, your own agency?
Yeah,
Okay,
if
cool.
you're the only one there, you could probably hop in someone else's room.
Yeah, I think Caroline is rejoining. She just stepped out and is coming back.
Okay. Anybody else need to be put in a room? Looks like it's mostly OUHSC people still in here in Anira.
For the HSC folks, will you join your program or programs plural and maybe help facilitate these questions?
Okay, I think we have everybody back. I hope that was enough time for you to talk about the things that you've learned about having a successful CQI project. And we have 15 minutes left. Why don't we go around and Lisa, do you want to go down the list of programs that we had breakout rooms for and just ask people to tell us what advice you'd have for the other project programs based on what you've learned?
Yeah, we can start with North Care.
Hello, and Lisa, can you repeat what you said, what you wanted to start with, just kind of what we talked about in our group, or?
Yeah, since we just have 15 minutes, let's why don't you give what your program has learned? What are your lessons learned about having a successful CQI project? And let's hold off on the projects for talking about the projects for next time, just in interest of time.
Sure. I think my focus, just what I've learned so far, is just really trying to support the providers in getting this, getting the data collected and getting the data entered. Excuse me. I think that they're kind of like the backbone of, being excited about the project, in turn getting the families excited about the project. And so if the providers aren't going to be super enthusiastic and, are kind of overwhelmed with the data entries and things like that, I think that's going to lessen their excitement to do it with the families. And so this next time around, I really want to make sure that the team is excited about it and that we're feeling good about our data entry methods. I had mentioned in our group that we're just kind of like the last team to finally get into ETO to get this data entered. And so I'm hoping that that is like a more user-friendly kind of interface than what we've been using before with the Access database. So yeah, I think that's kind of what my takeaway was.
Okay, terrific. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, we can go with LCDA next, both Say Care and PAT.
Yeah, and I'm not sure if when we went to the break rooms, if we were focusing just on this last PDSA, we kind of just talk about which ones we thought it was successful. And a couple that were mentioned, the ones that we created a protocol for missed home visit, that's something that is utilized and that's helpful, and it has really, help improve the services too. And where those families maybe they were not as consistent, and helping a little bit with the numbers. And we mentioned also that the one involving the deaths, just really a more intentional way of having a welcoming way of, say, welcome to the program to dads, and is still doing a lot of the things that we were doing, a little bit different, but providing that information to dads, that has been very helpful. So I guess whenever you see that something improves your services, it gives you, I don't know, makes you continue doing it, and you make it part of your practices. So that's two of the things that have continued as part of our practices.
Oh, that's terrific. Thank you.
Okay, how about Bethany Public Schools?
Hello. I have learned along the way to keep it as simple as possible. And when we started with the positive parenting practices handout, and we saw how simple it was to get families involved in those activities, just the everyday activities, we still noticed they still weren't reading to their children every day or singing to their children every day, which we think that should happen every day. And so we just brought it down very small, and hopefully, that will help build the relationship, parent-child relationship. So then those other things on the handout will come naturally because they're building that relationship as well.
Okay, that's interesting. So there's actually two parts to it. It's about building the relationship and helping them understand that connection to the everyday activity.
Right.
Okay, thank you.
So how about, let's see. Yolanda, OKCPS for adding.
Yes, I would say, like Patty was saying before, for example, we created a protocol after they do that cancellations with families. I mean, cancellation of the visits. We even have, I think that was my very first one, like 8 years ago, 2013, 14, I think it was. And we even put a protocol in place for that, and we still use. Continue with also with the father engagement or father figure engagement. I think we were very intentional, and we still do some, I would say that we adapt some of the things that we have learned. Thinking like Amy was saying, for me it's very important not to overwhelm the parent educators. So when we work in a project, I want, for them to be not to ask a lot of questions. So I try to be very simple with the questionnaires that we do to the families and the data entry as well. I think the one that we're working now, I think we collect data once a month, because again, I didn't want, on top of all the paperwork that they have to do, to be putting more information in the system.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I see Alicia on the call from Parent Promise.
Hi. So we discussed a little bit about making it a simple, kind of what Yolanda was talking about, trying not to make it too complicated for families nor for the PEs. And, this time around, we decided to talk to families about setting routines, which we had also decided to go ahead and set as goals. We had families had difficulty trying to figure out a goal as well. So we try to take advantage of that. Once they're setting the routine, let's try to make it a goal. And that kind of, we're following up with both at the same time versus just one. So that's pretty much what we were talking about.
Okay, so that's making a connection between what you would like for them to be doing and goal setting. Okay, thank you.
Okay, how about Lena from PCC-TPAT?
We also did some discussion about previous ones that worked, but really I think that one of the things that we did this time that was different from last time was making the timing of when to do all the CQI information and add it into ETO. It was a little bit easier to understand, because previously it was like every 3 months do this, and it was just I think it was still a little bit confusing this time, but not as confusing as it was last time. So I think that definitely making things, having clearer directions, making things as simple as possible, like you guys have already said, is probably the best way to do it from now on.
So that really was about implementation with your PEs then. And okay, great. Thank you.
Okay, how about Kelsey from Safe Care?
I was actually in the call with Lena, because there's just one of us each from Parent Child Center, and so we were on the call together. But yeah, one thing I had noticed for my team specifically with Safe Care is that this round with positive parenting and child development and what they're doing, like positively with their kids, like the reading and singing songs, it seemed a little bit easier than past times for us, because not everyone has a father involved at all. And so this way we could really focus on whatever parent is involved and building that relationship with their child. And I thought that was a lot better to kind of look at what our clientele really is.
Okay, So that's a good point, that having a project that will apply to more of your families makes it successful. Okay, thank you.
Okay, how about someone from C1 Tulsa? Would y'all like me to call it C1 Tulsa or Tulsa C1? I always ask myself that question, but I'm just curious what you all would like to be called.
Oh, I think either is fine.
Yeah, Tulsa C1 is good.
Yeah, I think of it as like an adjective for C1. We have
Yeah.
Oklahoma City C1 and Tulsa C1. All right, so would one of you like to summarize what we talked about?
Well, we definitely went with the keep it simple, model. We felt like staff buy-in was very important, making them part of the process, part of the planning. Can we really implement this in their work? And totally agree about the fatherhood thing. We don't really have fathers as clients, not that they're not involved, but our focus is moms. So sometimes that was a little trickier for us than this CQI, definitely.
Thank you.
Okay, I don't see anybody from Frontline on the call. Unless I'm overlooking someone. I know Yachi is on here, but how about someone from Cap Tulsa, Arian or Carolyn?
Yeah, I think I agree with Lucero and with Annie about the keeping, the CQI simple for the parent educators. I think it's they have so much work, so much documentation to make after a visit, before the visit, that adding a different piece that changes every year, every 6 months, it's hard. It's hard on them. And even though we try to keep it simple and try to kind of like make it fun for the families, like we did this, the parenting practices, and it was great. It was great. We have a great response from the parents. But I think on the other side, it's hard for the parent educators having so much documentation. So I think that's what we have learned, and we would like to, and we were talking about that with Andrew, to see how we can start a CQI project with doing what we are already doing. So, and collecting the data that we are already collecting. So we take that load out of the parent educators. So finger crossed to see if we can get that.
Yeah, so you're leveraging what you're already collecting. That's good. That's another way to keep it simple. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Lisa, have we hit all the programs? Do we have any more?
That's it.
Okay, great. Well, I think one of the themes that I'm hearing is keeping it simple, and that's for everybody. That's for the people who are going to have to be putting the rubber to the road and implementing your PDSA, as well as the clients that you're serving. All right. Dr. Bard, is there anything else you would like to say before we break for today?
Just as always, I really appreciate your thoughtful consideration of what it takes to pull off one of these PDA essay projects, and your blunt honesty too about what works and what doesn't work. So thank you for that. And I'm excited to see the presentations next month. Yeah, I almost chimed in earlier when we were going through the template. Sort of inspired by the work that the National Tribal MIECHV Coin Network has done. Yeah, I want you to feel some freedom there to move a little bit beyond the script. So although we want some information on all of the slides that you saw earlier presented, how you present that information, knock yourselves out, have fun with it. In the tribal network, I'll tell you, some of them came up with some really creative ideas. They kind of had a similar format, but you had some groups who would present it as a podcast, for example, and others presented it with some video clips of their own program folks being interviewed. And so, I know we're awfully short timing here wise, but feel free to have the liberty to move beyond just the two-dimensional display of that information, if you will.
Okay, thank you. Well, we sure appreciate your time, and let us know if there's anything we can do to help you as you prepare your presentations, and we will see you next month. Bye, everybody.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Yeah.